Ohio lawmakers taking up a new piece of legislation that could affect their wallets. The so-called State Official Integrity Act would ban statewide office holders from being paid for work in the private sector while in office. But will it get bipartisan support? Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Angela Ann, in today for Tracy. Well, this bill would apply to our top lawmakers like the governor, even Supreme Court justices. Ohio Democrats who introduced the Integrity Act say it is making sure state leaders avoid any appearance of compensation or corruption.
We believe that all Ohioans, no matter who they are or where they are from, they want to know that their elected officials are working for them.
Now, the legislation would be enforced by the Ohio Ethics Commission, and any state official in violation would have to forfeit their office. Now, this issue came to light after Lieutenant Governor John Husted took a paid corporate board position with a bank, and that raised some eyebrows at the Ohio State House. We reached out to his office for comment about the Democratic Party's concerns. Husted's press secretary Haley Carducci said, quote, "We appreciate their acknowledgement that the lieutenant governor has followed all of the rules. Certainly, if they change the rules in law, he'll, of course, follow the new ones as well." Well, right now, millions of more dollars are going to police departments across Ohio to fight crime. Earlier this week, Governor Mike DeWine announced an additional $42 million to the Ohio Violent Crime Reduction Grant Program. Now, that money can be used for anything from training to overtime pay. As 10 TV's Kevin Landers explains, it also means one local police department won't have to search eBay to fix its 911 system.
Whitehall's 911 operators are working with computer consoles so old they were installed when George H.W. Bush was president in 1992.
This grant was greatly needed because our current consoles are approximately 30 years old.
Whitehall applied for and received $634,000 to replace this outdated equipment, which the department says prevents it from blending fire and police calls. The mayor says newer computers can lead to faster response times.
We really have a great time lag in response, but if we can respond 3 to 5 seconds faster, that can save people's lives.
So where's the money coming from? The Ohio Violent Crime Reduction Grant Program is using funding from the American Rescue Plan. Police departments can use the money for things like hotspot policing, crime gun intelligence centers, retention and hiring bonuses, and crime reduction strategies.
Local law enforcement, local chiefs, local sheriffs, local mayors should be making the decisions for their community about specifically how this money gets spent.
Whitehall says not only will it use the money to replace its outdated consoles, but also add another 911 pod to improve emergency call response. The governor believes the funding could keep career criminals off the streets.
We've got to keep this small number of people who are responsible for the most violent crimes locked up longer.
That was Kevin Landers reporting. Now, the Whitehall Police Department is one of more than 100 Ohio law enforcement agencies receiving this money, now totaling $100 million. Police on the Ohio State University campus are sending a warning now to students as they move in for the new semester. That begins on Tuesday, but police say thieves are targeting students on and off campus. Crime Tracker 10's Lacey Crisp went to OSU to see how students can stay safe.
OSU is communicating with students a little differently, but they're hoping that students will get more of the information they want.
When violent crime would happen near campus, the university would normally email out a neighborhood notice. The university asked students if that was the best way to get the word out, and students said emails tended to get lost in their inboxes. So the university teamed up with Nexus Lexus to make a map of crimes that happened around campus in hopes it would give students a better visual about how to keep safe.
The city had already been using LexisNexis in a community crime map, so what we did is we worked with LexisNexis and figured out how to set that up and tailor it to our needs. And so right now, if you click on the community crime map on our DPS webpage, it shows a 1 mile radius around campus. And then it shows all of the crimes that have occurred.
And OSU and Columbus police are hoping with all of the extra patrols and extra information, it will help keep students safe. At OSU, Lacey Crisp, 10 TV News.
And if you have any crime that you want to track in your neighborhood, you can use our interactive crime map. Just go to 10tv.com/crimetracker10 and enter your address. Well, with more schools K through 12 going back to school this week, there is a push by the state to help kids access higher education while still in high school. Ohio's Auditor Keith Faber wants to expand the College Credit Plus program. Last year, the program saved Ohio families more than $163 million in what would have been college tuition costs. That comes down to an average of just over $4,000 a family.
The program works pretty well, that Ohio families have saved a lot of money, but with just a few tweaks, it should be doing better.
Faber also says he hopes more Ohio schools, high schools rather, will take advantage. Last year, the program awarded more than 8,000 associate degrees while kids were still in high school.
The short answer is that Ohioans could get better benefit out of the program if the high schools and the school districts that are offering the program better marketed it and promoted the programs, and if the programs actually tried to offer credits at the lowest possible alternative, and that is in the high schools taught by high school teachers. Right now, a number of our colleges and universities participate. In fact, all Ohio colleges and universities are accepting these credits. So why aren't we getting those to eligible high school students where possible?
Faber says this digital database with all that information can be found online, and you can see which districts are taking part. We do have a link at 10tv.com. Well, President Biden is planning to tour the country to talk about the new Inflation Reduction Act, which he signed into law last week. Democrats say this will help address health care and climate change issues, but Republicans say this will raise taxes on the middle class. Casey Decker with our Verify National team gets the answers.
The Inflation Reduction Act is the Democrats' latest bill to make big changes to economic, health, and climate policy. Many Republicans have criticized the bill, like this state representative who in a popular tweet said, quote, "The Inflation Reduction Act is a tax increase on the middle class." So let's verify. Does the Inflation Reduction Act raise taxes on the middle class? Our sources, the full text of the bill, the Tax Foundation, a bipartisan think tank, and Howard Gleckman, a senior fellow at the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center. The bill raises taxes on corporations in a couple big ways, but it does not raise taxes on individuals. Nowhere in the text does it mention income tax or any other kind of tax assessed on people, just companies. The Tax Foundation analyzed the proposal and found only two ways it could affect an individual's taxes. One is by actually offering some tax credits on stuff like health insurance and electric vehicles. The other is extending a Trump-era law that caps how much in losses certain business owners can write off on their taxes. That law was going to expire in 2027. This bill keeps it alive until 2029. And that's it. No other tax provisions affecting middle-class people or any other individuals. Now, critics of the bill say the larger corporate taxes could eventually be passed on to employees or shareholders who could be middle class in the form of lower wages and stock dividends. But tax expert Howard Gleckman says even if that happens, it's disingenuous to call it a tax hike, saying, quote, "If you're working for your company has to pay more in taxes. It doesn't mean that you're paying more taxes." So we can verify, no, the Inflation Reduction Act does not raise taxes on the middle class. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
Thank you, Casey. If you have anything you would like us to verify, just reach out to us on social media, or you can send an email to verify@10tv.com. Well, the Inflation Reduction Act includes a cap on insulin prices. So for people on Medicare, they will now pay just $35 a month.
This bill will deliver long overdue relief to millions and make healthcare more accessible, more equitable, and more affordable for years to come.
Lawmakers say the new law could save Ohio families up to $4,000 a year in premium costs. Well, lawmakers are taking an exception now to the state's statute of limitations. After the break, a former Boy Scout talks with Face the State about getting justice for the sexual abuse he says he suffered as a child.
This was just like the Catholic Church. You know, it was that widespread.
He is one of more than 1,000 children who say they were sexually abused as Boy Scouts. The organization agreed to a $3 billion settlement to those victims who are now adults. What is unique about this case is that the Boy Scouts of America will pay out regardless of a state's statute of limitations. 10 TV's Kevin Landers explains how 2 Ohio lawmakers are making an exception to the state law.
It happened around 9 years old.
Mujadid Muhammad says he was sexually abused at Boy Scout camp.
So it was over a period of several months.
And those months at camp, he says, turned an innocent boy into a street criminal.
My last sentence was like 32 years that I'd done 27 years of it. So, you know, my whole life was impacted by that trauma.
As part of a bankruptcy settlement, the Boy Scouts of America agreed to settle with all of its 82,000 victims nationwide. For the nearly 2,000 victims in Ohio, in order to receive the full settlement, lawmakers would need to pass a law to make an exception to the state's statute of limitations for sexual abuse.
It's a matter of fairness to the Ohio victims. That is, we've been invited to do it by the Boy Scouts themselves.
Representative Bill Seitz, a Republican, is a staunch supporter of statute of limitations and is a surprise supporter of what's called the Scouts Honor Law. It would make an exception to Ohio's statute of limitations only when there is a bankruptcy.
I do not favor a limitless statute of limitations.
His co-sponsor, Democrat Representative Jessica Miranda, herself a victim of abuse, disagrees.
According to ChildUSA.org, Ohio is failing survivors, and Ohio is failing our children. Current Ohio laws are failing all of us who are survivors.
Passing the Scouts Honor Law, lawmakers say, will ensure victims receive 100% of the Boy Scout settlement,
as opposed to only 35 to 40%, which is what these survivors would only receive under Ohio's current statute of limitations.
For victims like Mujadid Muhammad, he says money from the settlement won't erase the memory of the abuse he endured.
That trauma right there, you know, changed the whole trajectory of my life.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
Now, the Scouts Honor Bill must be passed by next June for Ohio victims to receive that settlement. Lawmakers believe with no opposition so far, they can pass it before the end of this year. Now, if you have experienced sexual assault or violence, there is always help available. You can reach out to the Ohio Sexual Violence Helpline. That number is 844-OHIO-HELP. Well, this morning, a candidate for the Ohio House of Representatives is responding to a discrimination lawsuit. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost and 21 other attorneys general filed the lawsuit against the Biden administration. That's because of a rule that would eliminate a state's Title IX and SNAP benefits if the state does not follow rules related to gender identity and sexual orientation discrimination. House candidate Jim Obergefell, who paved the way for legalizing same-sex marriage across the country, had this to say.
This lawsuit is not about making things better. This lawsuit is about targeting queer kids. This lawsuit is about targeting kids who are already marginalized, kids who are already vulnerable.
SNAP benefits typically provide low-income students with meals. If the rule was upheld, our state would no longer get funding for that program. Now, we reached out to Attorney General Dave Yost about the lawsuit. He's running for re-election this November, and his campaign manager sent us this statement, which reads in part, quote, "Under no circumstance will Dave Yost allow Biden to withhold food from needy children in a policy dispute." We will, of course, keep you updated as the lawsuit moves through the courts. Well, the FDA is making hearing aids available now over the counter. This means fewer people will have to see a medical provider for access. Health experts say this is a necessary move because not all hearing aids are covered under insurance, which could prevent some people from getting them.
When hearing isn't managed appropriately, it can have all sorts of consequences, from feelings of social isolation to anxiety to depression.
The over-the-counter hearing aids will cost much less, and they are set to hit stores by October. You can also order them online. Well, right now, major corporate dollars are going towards diversity and equity. Earlier this week, JP Morgan Chase announced a $1.5 million investment to create an Equity Design Institute for women of color. The banking giant says it is an effort to empower more women of color to lead in local economic development efforts.
So during this initial pilot, we're going to do 2 cohorts of 20 women, and it's not going to cost them anything except for their time and their interest in working with us to help solve these challenges.
So this new institute will be headquartered at Zora's House. That is a Columbus-based co-working space and leadership incubator for women of color. Well, thousands of Ohio families will now qualify for extended postpartum care. That means people on Medicaid will have full coverage for up to a year after pregnancy. The Department of Health and Human Services just approved the move. About 21,000 more families will now qualify. The extended postpartum care will also create more services for the mother, including mental health. The Biden administration says this is an effort to lower mortality rates across the country. New parents searching for baby formula may have a better chance of buying it now. A new report shows out-of-stock rates for powdered baby formula are coming down. Last week, about 25% of the infant products were out of stock, much better compared to mid-July when that rate hit a high of 31%. Well, back to school season means something different for a student in Hilliard. How the gift of a new heart is sending inspiration. This week, the U.S. Department of Transportation kicked off its annual Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over campaign. The agency is teaming up with local law enforcement to promote better and safer driving habits. This is also an effort to get drivers to not get behind the wheel unless they are sober, especially during the Labor Day holiday. Highway administrators say this is truly a life-saving campaign.
Today and every day, we want to remind you to drive sober. We want you to remind you to drive sober this Labor Day weekend and every day. We need your help. Remind your friends and neighbors to drive sober. And if they're impaired, arrange for a sober ride home. We all have a part to play in making smart choices and saving lives.
Now, we checked with ODOT. The agency says Ohioans will see more digital signs along the highways promoting sober driving, as well as more social media posts. And right now, Ohio lawmakers are working to allow students to take mental health days. This is called the Kids Mental Health Now Act. It would allow K-12 students to take up to 3 mental health days a year. That means any absence under this would be considered excused, and there will be no need for a doctor's note. Of course, this comes after more Ohio children say they have experienced symptoms of anxiety and depression, especially during the pandemic. According to the Children Defense Fund of Ohio, our state has seen a 42% increase in kids' mental health issues since 2016. Lawmakers are expected to hold hearings on the Kids Mental Health Act in the upcoming session. Well, recently there's been an influx of young people deciding to take a step back from social media. Spider-Man actor Tom Holland is the latest celebrity to make that shift, saying it had really become detrimental to his health. Now, we spoke with Dr. Megan Shabbing, a psychiatrist from Ohio Health, to find out why young people are moving away from social media. She says the prevalence of taking breaks could be a generational shift on beating the mental health stigma.
People are less embarrassed to talk about mental health now. I think people are starting to realize it's not necessarily my fault if I have depression or anxiety. These are problems with my brain and there are treatments for them and I'm going to get help. And every time somebody talks about that, I'm hopeful that it makes somebody else think about that and talk about it.
Dr. Shabbing says the first thing she tells people in a mental health crisis is to get off those social sites such as Instagram, Twitter, you name it. She also says it can help you identify the things that maybe make you happy and feel better in your daily life.
If it's just affecting you so that you're not enjoying things that you would normally enjoy, or it's making you feel bad about yourself, of course, if you're having trouble with sleep or you're not wanting to connect to people in real life, those can all be warning signs that it's time to kind of step away. And I think each person has to decide. I think stepping away entirely and taking a total vacation from social media is a great idea. I would challenge anybody to just try it, whether it be for a day or a week, and just see how you feel and see all of the different things that you may actually find that you enjoy doing that don't involve being on social media. I love the idea of this, and I'm glad that people are talking about this and that people are being thoughtful and deliberate about the whole social media role in everyone's life.
Bottom line, just unplug, right? Dr. Shabbing says if you still aren't sure about how to take a social media break, just take the time to rate how you're feeling when you're using the apps. And this could maybe give you a closer look at how being on the internet really impacts your mental well-being. Well, if you are someone who needs to talk with a professional about mental health issues, suicidal or not, or for yourself or maybe somebody else, you can call this new national hotline. You might remember this launched last month, and it's real easy to remember the number to get that professional help. Just dial 988, and you'll be connected with a mental health expert right away. Well, the start of the school year can sometimes be a little stressful, as we've seen with some students, and it's a true reality check for a Hilliard High School athlete. 1 year ago, at this time, her future was just about anyone's guess. She was healthy, but had a cardiac arrest. A rare genetic disorder proved to be an aggressive opponent. But Janine Humayden is living proof that victory is possible. Wake Up CBUS anchor Tracy Townsend shares her story.
A stroll with Janine Gigi Humayden is truly a step in the right direction.
I just try to do as much as I can.
When you consider that almost a year ago, the healthy 16-year-old field hockey player collapsed and suffered a cardiac arrest at home with her family. Doctors discovered it was a rare genetic disorder.
I don't remember any of that. I just remember when I was getting better.
It was a journey in the height of the Delta surge of coronavirus. Emergency departments and ICUs were swamped. OSU Wexner Medical Center cardiac surgeon Nahush Mokadam will never forget it.
It was one after another, and our team was probably at our lowest point of morale. And in the midst of all this, we get Gigi.
Humayden arrived on the most extreme form of life support, ECMO, in September of 2021. Her heart had failed to the point that it could not pump blood to her body.
What we really wanted to do for her is transplant her heart because we didn't think it was going to recover. Because she's a teenager, she is relatively small. Organ availability becomes limited.
Dr. Mokadam and his team turned to a total artificial heart with Gigi on a transplant list for a donor heart and facing a complication that claimed her right leg.
And when we first went home, it was like taking a new baby home. We thought, okay, how we're going to do this, and how our life is going to change, and making the adjustment.
It was major, but no match for this 4'9" dynamo who, working through occupational and physical therapy, is now back in the game she loves with the Hilliard Lynx.
Do you remember how you felt when you got back out there?
I don't know. It was like normal, like how I used to play.
Short in stature and standing tall in recovery, Gigi is on track to graduate with her class of 2023, looking ahead to college and hopeful that her journey inspires others.
People will be going through like worse than you are, and like you can still do what you want.
Now, Gigi managed to stay on track with her academics, even took some college courses. So she's on schedule to graduate this year. Good for her. Yesterday, she took part in the American Heart Association's annual Heart Walk with teammates and others from Hilliard rallying behind her. What a sweet story and truly an inspiration. You go, Gigi. We want to thank all of you for joining us here today on Face This Day. And remember, if it affects you, your family, and Ohio, we're here to make sure those accountable face the state.